Hey, what's good, fellas? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna take a look at 5 NBA players who just refuse to play for the teams that drafted them. Whether it's because they did not like the city or other reasons, these players just did not want to play for that team. And as a result, they ended up getting traded. The topic of this video is pretty straightforward, so without further ado, let's begin. Number 5, Kiki Vandeweghe. In the 1980 NBA draft, Vandeweghe was the 11th pick by the Dallas Mavericks. Now, at that time, the Mavericks were actually a brand new expansion team. The 1980-81 season was going to be their first year as a team in the NBA. And with the 11th pick of this draft, Mavs fans were excited. Vandeweghe was great in college and he just led UCLA to the final game of the NCAA tournament. However, shortly after the Mavs drafted him, he straight up refused to play for them because he did not want to play for a new, unproven expansion team. The Mavs kept trying to convince him to play, but Vandeweghe would not. This stalemate lasted for months, and 1 month into the season, the Mavs traded him along with another first-round pick to the Denver Nuggets for 2 future first-round picks. Vandeweghe would go on to have a solid career, mainly playing for the Nuggets and Blazers. He was a 2-time All-Star and averaged as much as 29.4 points per game in a season in 1983-84. Every time he played a game in Dallas, the crowd would relentlessly boo him, and honestly, it makes perfect sense why they did. It doesn't feel good when a player you drafted refuses to play for you, especially since he was the Mavs' first ever draft pick in history. Coincidentally enough, after his career was over, Vandeweghe actually worked for the Mavs front office for a couple of years, and he also helped train a young Dirk Nowitzki. Number 4, Dominique Wilkins. We all know Dominique as an Atlanta Hawk legend, but he was actually drafted by the Utah Jazz. In the 1982 draft, he was the 3rd overall pick by the Jazz, but the team was having some financial problems at the time. And back then, rookie contracts worked a bit differently and there was no standard for how much a player could be paid. The Jazz could not offer Dominique the money that he wanted, and after months of negotiations, he just had enough and gave up. So he demanded a trade and the Jazz sent him to the Atlanta Hawks. In hindsight, this trade was terrible for Utah because the players they got back, John Drew and Freeman Williams, played a combined 4 seasons with the team. Dominique, on the other hand, ended up having an illustrious career and became a Hall of Famer. Another interesting scenario here would be, what if the Utah Jazz kept Dominique and not trade him away? Would they still be able to get Karl Malone and John Stockton? And if they did, that's one hell of a lineup. Dominique at small forward, Karl at power forward, John at point guard. Maybe they could have won a championship with a team like that. But as all of their careers came to an end, none of them won any titles. Number 3, Billy Owens. Out of everyone on this list, Billy Owens is probably the player who most people don't know about. He was the 3rd overall pick in the 1991 draft by the Sacramento Kings, but he did not want to play for them. Whether it was a decision between him and his agent to put him in a better situation or something else, I'm not too sure about the details. After holding out for months until November when the season already began, the Kings finally traded him to the Golden State Warriors for fan favorite Mitch Richmond. The Warriors expected Owens to become the missing piece they needed, and even though they got him, the trade was still very difficult to make. Everyone on the team and the fans, they all loved Richmond, and this trade broke up the Run TMC trio of him, Tim Hardaway, and Chris Mullin. Richmond ended up turning into a 6-time All-Star in Sacramento and eventual Hall of Famer, while Billy Owens played 3 years for Golden State and that was it. Number 2, Kobe Bryant. Alright, so we all know Kobe was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets in 1996, and then they traded him to the Lakers for Vlade Divac. The trade was seen as okay at the time. Divac was a solid player and Kobe was an unproven 17-year-old. But looking back in hindsight, it turns out to be one of the worst trades in history for Charlotte. However, according to an article from 2007, Kobe's agent at the time, Arn Tellem, was asked about Kobe being a Hornet. How would he have done there? And then Tellem told him, okay, alright, so yeah, he told him that this is an impossibility. There are no ifs, it would not happen. He is going to be a Laker and that's the only team he's playing for. Kobe himself hasn't made any comments about this, but it makes sense why his agent would want him to be in LA. More opportunities for endorsements, commercials, all that stuff to improve Kobe's popularity and brand. So then Arn Tellem can also get a bigger cut of the profits, cause Los Angeles is just a way bigger market than Charlotte. And finally, last but not least, number 1, Steve Francis. He was the 2nd overall pick of the 1999 draft by the Vancouver Grizzlies, which makes him the highest pick out of the other players on this list. But unlike the other players here, Francis was very open about not wanting to play in Vancouver. He publicly said that he did not want to go there. The reasons were because it was too far from his home in Maryland, the higher taxes, and he just did not want to leave the country in the first place. For a short period of time though, Francis actually warmed up to the idea and reconsidered playing in Vancouver. The Grizzlies originally drafted him with no intentions of trading him, and for a while, Francis was content. He actually traveled to Vancouver to check out the city, but then he ran into an incident at the airport there. Apparently, some people at the airport, not knowing who Francis was, went up to him and asked him what rap group he was from. This was the final straw for Francis. He just snapped after this. As a result, the Grizzlies realized that they could no longer convince Francis to stay anymore and traded him to the Houston Rockets. Then 1 year later, the owner of the Vancouver Grizzlies sold the team because attendance was dropping like crazy. And obviously, part of it had to do with Francis not wanting to play there. It just made people feel bad about the team, and it didn't really give it a good image. Only an average of 14,000 fans attended their home games in the following season. Eventually, a new owner bought the team and relocated them to Memphis. That's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed that video. I'm sure I missed some other players who also refused to play for the teams that drafted them. There's probably a lot more than just 5, so let me know in the comments about the players I missed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.